If you're looking to win your league in 2025, you need to consider all of these dynasty trade targets. To kick it off, let's just go right to the wide receiver position, and it's DJ Moore. While, yes, I am a Bears fan, so maybe there's a little bit of bias built into this, but hear me out. DJ Moore has gone over 14 points per game 3 of the last 4 seasons, and he's only valued at wide receiver 26 in Dynasty right now. And I don't think that's reflective of the upside he possesses in 2025. You have a few things, or actually a lot of things, that are changing in Chicago right now. One is the big one, right? Ben Johnson. He is the guru, the best offensive play caller that was available on the market. He is now the Bears head coach. That should lead to a bump, or at least a better schemed offense for both him and Rome Odunze, honestly. On top of that, Keenan Allen is not expected to return. Now, look, they may go out and add a third wide receiver in the draft or through free agency, and I don't expect it to be a high-profile one. I mean, look, whoever replaces Keenan Allen, very few people are going to pull in a 27% target share. That should lead to more opportunity for both DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. And finally, Caleb Williams heads into year 2. He should take a step forward. He is hopefully, fully removed from the dysfunction of 2024 that Chicago dealt with. All of these things just point to DJ Moore potentially finishing as a high-end wide receiver 2 again. And again, if you can get him at wide receiver 26 prices, that's a great investment, especially as you're trying to win now. Like when you want to look at what could you give up to get DJ Moore. Some trades I've seen, and this one I don't fully agree with, a late 2025 first. If that's the case and you're a contender, then yeah, like DJ Moore for that price makes all the sense in the world, especially given the wide receiver talent or projected wide receiver talent in this rookie class. I want DJ Moore if I'm trying to win a title. The other one that's more of a rebuild to contender type trade, Keon Coleman, a mid-second in 2025, that is, and then Christian Watson. Look, if you're trying to win, DJ Moore obviously gives you more value than Keon Coleman. He's better than a second. Christian Watson is a total wild card coming off of an injury. That is a great trade for a contending roster, and honestly, I get it for the rebuild side as well. Our second wide receiver we're looking at, we actually mentioned already. It's Keenan Allen, and again, not the Bears bias trying to show through here, but I think Keenan Allen has something left in the tank, and especially when you consider the price, Keenan Allen makes all the sense in the world, even as he enters free agency. He's currently valued on Keep Trade Cut as the wide receiver 70. I mean, there are not 70 players I'd rather have if I'm trying to win a title over Keenan Allen. As a rebuilder, yeah, you want nothing to do with the guy. I fully get that. But just last year, he pulls in a 27% target share. Now, because of how terrible Chicago was, that was wide receiver 36 in points per game, right? 12.3 only. That is not great. And on such high volume, maybe it's a red flag. But again, at wide receiver 70 prices, that's worth a risk to me. And look, he's going to hit free agency in 2025. That is the expectation, like I said. And there are a lot of wide receiver needy teams that could use Keenan Allen. Is he a wide receiver 1? I know, I think those days are probably behind him. But there are a lot of guys that could use him as a 1B or a wide receiver 2 in basically any offense. But teams like the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Jets, the Steelers, Denver, all of these teams have an opening and would actually utilize a wide receiver 2 and make them fantasy relevant. So look, Keenan Allen is not the guy he once was, unfortunately. But if I'm trying to win a title and he's only going to cost me wide receiver 70 prices, I don't see how you don't make that chance. Like what he's been traded for, a 2025 third, I mean, like 10 times. That is a very common trade for Keenan Allen right now. Or even Kayshon Boutte. I mean, he came on strong at the end of last year, but he's still probably a long shot to be long-term fantasy relevant. Keenan Allen's going to give you a better chance to win. As a contender, he's a very obvious target right now. Why not? Let's stick with the theme of ex-Bears wide receivers. I am talking Darnell Mooney. And Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 44 prices right now. And look, I talked about Darnell Mooney right before the season started. He was one of those forgotten players that was worth a flyer. Back then, he was valued right around where Keenan Allen is now. Now, again, not sky high, but he had a great season relative to his expectations. He pulls in a 21% target share. He was wide receiver 38 in points per game. and he fell just 8 yards short of 1,000 yards. That crushed his expectations. If you had Darnell Mooney as a contender, he gave you plenty of usable weeks. He was a wide receiver 3 or better 56% of the time in 2024. That was with Kirk Cousins, who I think all of us would consider a little bit washed up potentially. Like he produced with Kirk Cousins. And now you get Michael Penix in year 2. I mean, Drake London's going to be the 1, but Darnell Mooney is the clear-cut 2 here. I think he's obviously past Kyle Pitts in terms of pass-catching relevancy in this offense as well. Like, look, he's not a flashy name. He's not a big name. But you could do so much worse than Darnell Mooney in your deep dynasty leagues. And like I said, wide receiver 44 prices, that's basically equated to Darnell Mooney in a third for like a mid-2025 second. Basically, to move back around and pick up Darnell Mooney as a flex play, I like that move. Even a late 2025 second just by itself, I think is perfectly fine. Again, he has wide receiver 2 upside. If anything happens to Drake London, that is, a shocking amount of value Darnell Mooney's going to carry. And just one more trade that I saw that was interesting. If you really want to offload, to a rebuilder, Jalen Polk and 2/3, I don't hate that either, right? Polk's value's in the gutter. Unfortunately, I missed on him so badly. But Darnell Mooney is a great way to make up for that. Now, my first non-Bears wide receiver I'm going after is still a familiar name if you've been watching this channel for a long time. It's Jakobi Meyers. Look, Jakobi Meyers, it's my yearly reminder. Trade for Jakobi Meyers. He is never valued appropriately. Wide receiver 43 right now, which actually I think is probably the most accurate value I have seen on Jakobi Meyers in the last 3 years. All he does is outproduce what he's expected to do on a year-by-year basis. He's one of the better wide receivers that people just don't talk about or really care for in fantasy, and he always gives you borderline wide receiver 2 numbers, and he's never priced there. Even last season, we said, right, if Devontae Adams gets hurt or gets traded, Jakobi Meyers could be a wide receiver 2. That was the path, that was the hypothesis that we threw out in that same video with Darnell Mooney last year. And he finishes as wide receiver 23 in points per game, 14.5 points per game on the season. That includes the games he played with Devontae Adams. That's a career high in points per game. He pulls in a career high in target share at 24.9%. He is just a good wide receiver. There's nothing else to say about it. So look, he's the same price as Darnell Mooney. All the trades I threw out for Mooney, I'd be throwing out for Jakobi Meyers as well. I like every single one of those deals, and he will forever be a contending trade target that is dirt cheap. Now, our last wide receiver trade target maybe is a bit of an obvious one, or it's the biggest name we're going to talk about. It's A.J. Brown, right? Look, A.J. Brown is about to turn 28 years old this summer. He's 3 straight seasons as a wide receiver 1 in Philly. And he's valued at wide receiver 14 prices, which, I understand why he's valued here. There's a lot of young, up-and-coming, exciting names that are getting pushed ahead of him. But if you're contending, your list is a little bit different. If you can trade like a Marvin Harrison Jr. for A.J. Brown and picks, like a second at least, that's a great deal. Right? I know I'm jumping past why A.J. Brown's a good target here, but that's a trade just I want to throw right off the rip there. I think that's worth it. He's going to give you more value this season and probably next year maybe than Marvin Harrison Jr. would, and really give you wide receiver 1 upside if you're trying to win a title. Now, run it back just to why this matters. He had a down year, and that's another reason he's sitting at wide receiver 14. But his down year is just because Saquon Barkley had one of the best seasons of all time for a running back. That is going to obviously drop how much you're passing the ball. You have an elite defense as well, so they're not trailing a ton. That's going to drop how much they throw. So both those things just led to overall lower passing volume for A.J. Brown. That's the drop in production this year. But look, when they did throw the ball, he had a 33% target share. That is second among all wide receivers. Make no mistake, A.J. Brown did not drop off. The situations just kind of dictated and changed his overall fantasy production. The player is still absolutely elite in every sense of the word, and it's a good time to buy that dip if you're trying to win a title and steal A.J. Brown away for maybe a little bit cheaper than you could have last season. If all of those things went right this year for Saquon and the Eagles defense to push A.J. Brown down, look, they are that means he's one injury away, a Saquon Barkley injury away, or a few injuries on defense away from being a high-volume wide receiver again, or a guy that could see 140 targets at least. So you're just betting on talent and hoping the circumstances change just enough to push variance into his favor. That's it. And prices, we talked about the Marvin Harrison trade. You could even give up a mid-first and a mid-second. And I think that deal, like those two alone for A.J. Brown, make a ton of sense. There's a lot of ways you can go out and get him. And I think people may look at him as a falling asset. And I just don't view it that way right now if I'm trying to win a title. Let's get away from wide receivers. We've talked about 5 of them. Let's go to the running back position. And I'm not going to give you the 3 super obvious names, right? Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon. Like, yeah, I get why you want all of them. Everybody understands why they're good contending trade targets. I don't think we really need to dig into that. They're also on my list, so take that for what it's worth. Guys you should target. But a name that I think is maybe a little bit under the radar because he's not as flashy as those 3 players, Alvin Kamara, another huge name with huge production that is just obviously at the back end of his career. And he's valued lower than all 3 of the guys I just mentioned. He's the only one outside of the top 20 running backs in current value on Keep Trade Cut. He's at RB22. And look, he's about to turn 30. The Saints are bad. No one wants to coach them. They don't have cap space. Everything is terrible in New Orleans. Everything but Alvin Kamara. Everything we just said it can be almost kind of skewed as a good thing for Alvin Kamara. Maybe not the coaching problem, but the cap space thing. That's a good thing for Alvin Kamara. They're not bringing in high profile competition. They're not spending a high pick on a running back again. They need to fill out the rest of the team because they can't pick up people in free agency. Those draft picks have to be used on other positions of need. That's great. This defense being terrible, and again, it won't be good overnight. That's going to be good for Alvin Kamara because he is used so heavily in the pass game. Them trailing, while they may have shorter drives, his target share is going to continue to stay high. That is what the big thing is for Alvin Kamara. That's where all the production comes from right now. I mean, just the last 3 seasons, 21.5% target share, 19.2%, and 18.2% target share. He's used like a wide receiver too. Like in an NFL offense, that's the kind of production he sees. That's led to RB5, RB3, RB13 finishes in points per game. Alvin Kamara is one of the better older running backs that carries 18 plus point per game upside, and you don't have to pay those kind of prices. He's going to be cheaper than the other 3, I think, obvious, contending trade targets, other, end of career running backs. I mean, he's been going for Jalen Wright a 3rd and a 4th. If I'm contending, yeah. Like Jalen Wright is going to be a good handcuff. I believe that. And then 2 dart throws. Give me a guy that, again, could be a top 5 running back in points per game. I'm in on that. Tajay Spears in a 4. Look, I like Tajay Spears. I liked him a lot coming into last season. He has his own problems. If I'm trying to win a title, the upside of Kamara is better than Spears right now. So there's a lot of things you could do. Even one that I saw somebody get really creative with was Chase Brown for Kamara and a 2026 first. That kind of helps you toe the line. Chase Brown could be a flash in the pan. He could disappear in 2 years. And then you're looking at, a first in 2026 along with the production this year. I think that's a great deal as well. Now, 2 quarterbacks I want to touch on before we wrap the video here. The first being Brock Purdy. He was also on my rebuild trade target video, and I think it's just because he's undervalued and he's a good piece to have on any dynasty roster. So I can kind of run back through that argument if you want. Or just go watch where I did it in the rebuild trade target video. He's QB 15 in terms of value right now. He's only 25 years old. He's the QB 9 in points per game in 2024. The QB 14 in points per game in 2023. He has exceeded his current value each of the last 2 years as a starter. And this year was, him finishing his QB 9 is due a little bit to, down QB play across the league. But I think it's great that he maintained his production from 2023, considering the circumstances were vastly different. You don't have CMC. You don't have Brandon Ayuk. You have a washed up version, or it seems to be washed up version of Deebo Samuel. You have George Kittle having a career year. So he found ways to get really creative and still produce in this offense for fantasy. Shout out Juwan Jennings, first of all, who just was a superstar because of it. But even in a situation where things were not perfect, Brock Purdy gave you QB1 numbers or, low or high-end QB2 numbers. That's good to see. That is what you want, because that's the biggest question with him, I think, right? Is how does he produce when everything isn't working perfectly? The NFL results were mixed. That is fair to say, but the fantasy production was spectacular. So look, as a contender, Brock Purdy has, top 12 upside, and you don't necessarily have to pay those exact kind of prices. If you want to look at what you could do, kind of shop for a contender to a rebuilder, if you want to give up Anthony Richardson, let somebody else roll the dice there because you want a stable asset, I can understand that. Maybe you want to stick with the upside of Richardson, that's fine as well, but I think Purdy is a worthwhile pivot if you know you're trying to win a title and Anthony Richardson benching or injury could sink you. Purdy's a safer play. In addition to that, you could also just go the route of trading picks for a proven quarterback. And look, it's expensive. It's a 2025 first, probably mid-tier, mid-second, and then a 2026 first. That's the cost of these guys that give you QB1 upside. That's just the name of the game. So that's what you have to contend with if you want to get Purdy onto a contending roster. And then finally, to close us out, and this one I don't think people expected to see probably, and I even feel weird saying it, I think Trevor Lawrence might be an interesting buy low for a contending roster. Now, I understand the hesitation with Trevor Lawrence. He was a guy that used to be valued as a top 10 quarterback, has not produced that way. The production has not been consistent, but now he's down at QB 21 prices on Keep Trade Cut. Look, he is a sinking asset. He's somebody people are wanting to ship off for just about anything. But if you look at the situation, it should improve this year. Look, they bring in Liam Cohen. The weird Duval interview aside, Liam Cohen is a good offensive mind. He is a good offensive coach. I think that's going to help. You also have Brian Thomas moving into year 2. And look, Brian Thomas is a certified superstar. Having those types of guys on the outside is helpful. And even when you take a step down from Brian Thomas, he's not the only piece there. You have Christian Kirk. You have Evan Ingram. This team just has it feels bad vibes, bad juju sitting around them. Liam Cohen could come in with his scheme and make it more quarterback friendly. Look at Baker Mayfield just last year. There is a track record or a path to Trevor Lawrence rebounding and having immense fantasy success in a Liam Cohen, called offense. So at QB 21 prices, and I'm looking for maybe, I'm having rotational QB2s. Trevor Lawrence is a perfect piece to fit into that, and hoping he can secure the QB2 role on your own offense is the tantalizing piece here. So what does it cost, right? That's the question though. What does it cost to actually get him? One that I think was interesting, Trevor Lawrence and a mid-2025 second for George Pickens straight up. Now that feels like a team need, and there's some weird noise around George Pickens maybe leaving the Steelers, they're moving on from him. So maybe that skews the price here, but that's an interesting trade that went through in January. And then also Trevor Lawrence for 2 late 2025 firsts. I think that might be steep, although in this draft class, I think the value is maybe a little bit better than it feels at face value.